Hi everyone. This week, week 3, you're going to be reading some short stories by authors who are noted for their use of humor, whether that is traditional sense of humor or a darker, more black sense of humor. One author I want to point out in particular, who is the only author of the 3 who's no longer living, is Flannery O'Connor. And Flannery O'Connor is a female author known primarily for her writing in the Southern Gothic style. So we read Frankenstein, which is considered a Gothic novel, and we talked about how Gothicism often entails stories of spirits and monsters and creatures. There's a high sense of drama. There are caves and caverns and labyrinths and hexes and omens, and that was the style that created or segued into Southern Gothic, which is a somewhat more recent movement than just Gothic fiction. So you might be familiar with other Gothic writers like Edgar Allan Poe is sometimes considered Southern Gothic in addition to being Gothic, Zora Neale Hurston, William Faulkner, Cormac McCarthy, and Tennessee Williams, just to name a couple. There are more than that, but those are some pretty common names. And Southern Gothic literature focuses primarily on characters in the South who are oftentimes abhorrent. They are grotesque, they are irrational, they are just mean people, and there's not necessarily always a reason behind their behavior. It's speculated that Southern Gothic works because the South is the center of a lot of American repression, in that we have this idyllic notion of the South as this pastoral land that is rolling hills and beauty, but we also have this horrible history of slavery that built it. And so for many generations after the Civil War, you had people who romanticized the South prior and during slave times, and that romantic notion still remains today in some parts of the South and some parts of the world. So Flannery O'Connor and writers like her, I think, capitalize or try to expose those wounds that we bury. And so her short stories often deal with issues of race, and they feature very unlikable characters. When I read Flannery O'Connor for the first time in college, I was struck by how different she was than all the other writers I'd been reading, and how just fresh and cynical and morbid she was. And if you like somewhat jarring things, and I know from your introductions that you all posted with some of your favorite writers, I think some of you will like Flannery O'Connor. You will enjoy her style of writing because it is dark, and it's supposed to be funny at times, although if you don't know what you're getting into, it can feel rather jarring. So she was born in Georgia, raised on a farm, and she ended up going to the University of Iowa for her Master's of Fine Arts in Writing, and she had a short life. She died at age 39. She was diagnosed with lupus and went back home to live out her days, and wrote copiously in the short amount of time that she had left in her life, and wrote primarily short stories. So whenever you find Flannery O'Connor works, you're going to get a collection, usually of short stories. The characters will be different, but the flavor of the characters will be very similar. If you are a movie buff or a cinephile, you might recognize Southern Gothic style films with The Notorious Deliverance from several decades ago, A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams, Baby Doll, which I think was produced in either the 50s or the 60s. More recently, Winter's Bone, which features Jennifer Lawrence. I think that was the late 2000s. And then HBO shows like True Detective and even True Blood, which is, I know, about vampires, but it's set in the South, and you have some pretty ridiculously grotesque characters in that as well. So enjoy Flannery O'Connor's work. It is starkly different from what David Sedaris writes, who is a humorist who's still living. He lives in Paris. And then Sherman Alexie, who is an American author who lives in the U.S. still. And as I've noted on the announcements area, Alexie, I adore Alexie's work, but he's gotten into trouble recently. And given the scandals that have risen this last year and the rise of the Me Too movement, I felt like it would be a disservice to not mention that. So I posted a link to the story and his response to it. So read that go into that knowing that that has been making some headlines. So we're taking a little bit of a turn from more serious, more traditional types of literature to the more humor-based in some way or another and slightly dark types of humor. So enjoy, and if you have any other questions, let me know. Thanks.